Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the final of SURF's shared learning workshops, learning from the SURF Awards. My name is Ewan Leach. I am the Chief Executive of SURF, and I'm really pleased to welcome you to today's event, which is looking at creative regeneration. As I have said in the other events, this is a recorded Zoom event. You should be on mute. We're hearing from 3 speakers, and then there'll be a Q&A, and then we'll have our 4th speaker, followed by another Q&A, which you can raise your hand or put questions in the chat box during the event this morning. As I've also been saying, SURF Awards are not something you get just for Christmas and it's lovely and you go away and go home with it. You are made aware that when you apply for a SURF Award, that the whole purpose of the SURF Awards is so that we can all learn from good practice. And obviously last year, what we've learned a lot is how many organisations have reacted or dealt with, prospered and learned new things due to what has been a quite disastrous year due to COVID. And today's event is very similar in that our speakers that we'll hear from this morning will be talking about the impact COVID has had on their audiences and their members and how they have responded to that in many different ways. But you're not here to hear from me, you're here to hear from our speakers. And this morning we have the award-winning, from the SURF Award-winning project, the Glasgow Barons, and we have 2 commended projects from the SURF Awards, from ToonSpeak and from Plantation Productions. But our first speaker this morning is Paul McAlinden from the Glasgow Barons. And Paul, I'm going to ask you to unmute and start sharing your presentation now.
Thank you very much indeed, Ewan. So I'm going to click that and go back to there, and
that's worked.
Click that and off we go. So hello everybody, good morning. My name is Paul McAlinden and I'm the Artistic Director of the Glasgow Barons here in Govan in Glasgow. So we're all now coming out of months of house arrest. So I'm looking today at the prison breaks of the mind that we need to get through in order to move forward, and how some of that has happened with the Glasgow Barons over the past 12 months. So first of all, we need to break through the wall of silence around narcotics. Here in Govan, very many people have lost control of their addictions, which has tragically led to increased antisocial behaviour, suicides, financial ruin and criminality. As this issue was exploding in Govan during the pandemic, I partnered up with Steg G, who is the station head of Sunny Govan Community Radio, and Turning Point Scotland, who support people with complex needs, and they're based at the bottom of Govan Road. So together we delivered a weekly hip-hop Zoom session for folk recovering from addiction. Here's Vita and Anne-Marie rapping away after 5 months of the course.
Let's play a part, let's make a start. Who's blaming who? Is it me or is it you? Don't fail to see that we hold the key. Only one part on life's stage. It's time to stand and make a change. Just say yes to help each other. Let's be one and let love take over.
I actually want to play all of that, but I can't, so we'll move on. For Vita and Anne-Marie, recovery rap was a lot about building up self-confidence and telling their story during isolation. Now, the second barrier to break through is about expressing complex and difficult things as we deal with the mental health effects and crisis of the pandemic. David Tyma is a well-known and very well-loved character around Central Govan with his guitar. He expresses his complex needs through music. So in this case, I set him up with a local sound engineer who already knows David very well, and a videographer who knows Govan. And here's a bit of the resulting song, Call Out the Dead. Now, his song is filled with a lot of tragedy and very profound truths about life in Govan that some would rather have swept under the carpet, but through it, he can now hold his head up high. So the video has also garnered 2,400 hits. You can find it on the Glasgow Barons YouTube page, and lots of positive comments. So, the third barrier to break through is social isolation. If you've got your videos of me talking, then that headline on the right is internet poverty that's covered. This isn't a picture of me in the Home Shopping Network, but rather giving out free tablets with prepaid internet last May. And yet internet access in Govan is still patchy, as folk can't afford to top up their data, or coverage is rubbish because it's Govan, it's a poor area, or they're just very uncomfortable being online. So internet poverty is still a major barrier for participation, not just financially, but also through all those web forms and websites that are total design failures on people's smartphones. So we're evolving our weekly music courses to run on and offline to reach different people through different channels. There's COP26. The fourth breakthrough is the silence around poverty and the climate emergency. So here's a map of the COP26 road closures you can see, which is going to be in November, with Govan here on the south bank of the Clyde, where the BBC is. Yeah, we can obviously run loads of projects with young people, but actually, with COP26 and the climate emergency, it's the adults who need to act now. So, sausages. In Iceland, in Govan Cross Shopping Centre, I can buy these 8 meat-free sausages on the left in a cardboard box, or 32 pork sausages in a non-recyclable bag on the right, each for £2. So if you're in poverty, which one matters to you most? In order to have a carbon footprint, you need to be affluent. And ironically, in order to reduce it, you need to be more affluent still. So why should anybody in Govan care about COP26 on their doorstep? That's why we're commissioning our third hip-hop album about the poverty perspective on the climate emergency, and we're also creating a new Glasgow Barons version of Vivaldi's Four Seasons called Four Seasons in One Day. Now, through Sunny Govan FM, we've already worked with Scottish rappers on albums like Live Today, which addresses the poverty trap and sectarianism here in Govan, and toxic masculinity around the Govan riots of August 2019. Here's a clip from that album with the duo CCTV.
I vandalise myself, I'm no scared to end up scarred. I won't verbalise emotion, my veins shot up to shards. Now feeling fully fit and fixed, healing up is hard. But I'm a well my way, I'm a well my. Vandalise myself, I'm no scared to end up scarred. I can't wait to cause commotion, my pain's rotting the stars. Now feeling fully fit and fixed, healing up is hard. But I'm a well my way, I'm a well my. I vandalise myself.
Oh, there we go. So that leads us on to the sixth barrier, which is the fifth and toughest breakthrough for an orchestra, which is one of class, particularly here in Govan. That's why all of our Govan concerts are £3 to get in or £1 concession. This allows a diverse range of locals to walk to a concert and have a great night out, or to afford a taxi from door to door if they don't feel safe enough or they have mobility issues. So when we work with professional musicians, whether classical or hip-hop, everybody gets paid musicians' union rates, so that critically, parachuting professionals aren't the only earners in a project. An example of this is the live orchestral version of our first hip-hop collaboration, The Air in Between, in 2019. So, that leads me on to the sixth barrier to break through, or at least here in Govan to work around, and that's religion, which divides here much more than it unites. Currently, we're working with the Adonai Bible Church's African congregation to train up their beginner gospel band with free lessons. This came out of various conversations over a period of months with the pastor Tony Oyoboke on Govan Road. Here's a clip from their first performance, 10,000 Reasons. It's not only about style or purpose, which is obviously very important to the church, but it's also about the musical benefit to the players and a local minority community. So, the seventh barrier to break through is racism, and it's already happening through our award-winning Musicians in Exile. Again, a very simple coming together of asylum-seeking and refugee musicians. This group breaks down misconceptions and gives something back to their host communities through videos and live performances. Here's Always on the Move, which is their song for this year's Refugee Festival Scotland. So I'm going to finish off now by taking us back to the MacLeod Hall in Govan's Pearce Institute, where this session was actually supposed to happen in person. Here are the Glasgow Barons last November doing a socially distanced performance of Tchaikovsky's Serenade for Strings, reviving the 1905 building's original function as a classical music venue. So that's the Glasgow Barons' overall approach, and it's to break down barriers through local music opportunities and bring folk together in a variety of new ways. The pandemic has only really sharpened the mission. Thank you.
Paul, thank you very much for that. That was a whistle-stop tour of the great range of work the Glasgow Barons are doing. And I have to say, hearing Tchaikovsky at the end is quite emotive, hearing that music. And that is a venue that we should have all been in today. And I think if you want to, we'll put a link in the chat, but if you want to look at the Glasgow Barons YouTube, then you'll find a lot of the performances available on that. And it's a great example of, well, you've illustrated well why you were the award winner for Creative Regeneration in this category of the SURF Awards. And I should point out that our speakers this morning, they're all from Glasgow. This is the choice of the judges. The judges come from Greenock, Dumbarton, Edinburgh, Wester Hailes. It's just by chance that we're all talking about Glasgow projects. It's not because SURF is based there or any other conspiratorial reason. But thank you very much for that presentation. Well, I'm sure there'll be questions for you in a few minutes. We're now going to hand over to Hazel Wotherspoon, who is going to tell us about the work of TuneSpeak. Hazel.
Hi everyone, just let me share my screen. Okay.
Great, that's worked.
Okay, thanks so much. I don't know why I always feel I have to do a first slide to remind me of who I am, but that's just a consequence of too much Zoom. So I am Hazel Wotherspoon, and it's really lovely to be here today to share a little bit about our work. We wanted to concentrate on talking about the work that we've done in the last 12 months in particular, because it was a diversion from what we would normally do. So who we are, so we're a youth-led arts organisation based in Glasgow, and pre-COVID we were working in 3 areas within the city centre in the bottom 6% of SIMD. And what we do is we help young people to thrive in spite of the intersecting disadvantages that they face. So our work was physical. It was delivered in community spaces and theatre venues, bringing much needed revenue to them. By referral, so working really closely with referral partners, including schools, NHS and social services. By word of mouth, so lots of friends bringing friends and telling their wee brother and sister. And free. So we have always operated like this, where we transport young people from across the city to our courses and classes. We do that by taxi, and we provide food and refreshments. So our tripart programme is delivered under these three strands: inspire, transform and progress. And these are a range of developmental and creative learning activities that take people from an early stage and nurture and build them until they actually can look at arts careers. So many of our young people have gone on to do absolutely incredible things. And we try to find them placements, paid work experience, or we actually will have paid work experience with TuneSpeak itself. So that was all going really well. We'd had a lovely year, and then COVID hit. And so the decision that we had to make in March 2020, which will resonate with many of you, I remember it really clearly. It was the 17th of March, and we had to shut everything. We had to go from being a busy and vibrant office with a physical programme to zero. But on reflection with the team, we actually at that point, which sounds so daft now, thought that it would all be over by the summer. So we all went home thinking, we'll get on with that summer programme, we'll get that up and going. So we were talking about the loss of a term at that stage. We were not considering a new normal, just simply back to normal. So then it really kicked in, and what we kind of have pinpointed as a team, that really a lot of this was about fear, and this was the fears that we were dealing with. So we needed to relocate the power source. So the making a plan, and what I thought was really important is that we actually acknowledged the fears that we were feeling. So really key one for myself and the team and all the fantastic artists that we work with: what would happen to the vulnerable children and young people we work with in lockdown? Many had come to us because they were already struggling. We're funded by a lot of funders to deliver physical work. What was going to happen to our funding? Who actually are we if we're not physically delivering? How will we stay in contact with our young people? What's going to happen to our freelance workforce? And this one from the core staff team: don't furlough me, please. So just on to the next slide. So what we did was we made a plan. So what would happen with the vulnerable children and young people we work with in lockdown? We decided we would be an anchor organisation and apply for funding to deliver our response programme. We're funded to deliver physical work. What's going to happen to our funding? We'll communicate with our funders. We'll let them know what we are doing rather than what we are not. And I have to say, incredible support and flexibility has come from that action. Who actually are we if we're not physically delivering? Our missions to change lives through creativity. Our values are excellence, empowerment, progression, advocacy, listening and learning. We just had to find a way to do that differently. How will we stay in contact with our young people? At the start, we called each and every one of them individually and checked in, and continued to do that. What would happen to the freelance workforce? We were so concerned about this. So we decided that that was a key part of the response programme, that it would be actually about very clearly offering opportunities for the freelance workforce to gain some employment. Don't furlough me, please. I was very happy to say to people, I won't. We've got a plan and we've got work to do. So our response programme that we actually built from acknowledging and working through the fear factor and what I call repowering. So the first of these was Creative Calm, and this was our response to the anxieties and concerns about the future and loneliness we knew that many young people would be feeling. So it was delivered in a series of interventions, but this was delivered by art therapists who we already had a relationship with, who are also experts in ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. So we ended up actually, although I've talked there, it was delivered through drama and music, but it was also actually about this connection that Paul has talked about, because people who live in poverty were actually becoming more and more isolated, especially at the start of lockdown when the rest of us all started to go on Zoom. So this one was really interesting. I wanted to share this because we didn't get the response that we expected from participants to start with. And it took a lot of time to build up the trust and also to do that kind of therapeutic work digitally. So actually I'll come on to that, but the plan for a greater number of check-in sessions was actually replaced with a longer time period being spent with individuals and actually their families. Projects by Post was a response to children and families being locked down at home. So this was a programme designed to bring structured arts and crafts to Hello Barmulloch. This is a programme that we've run for a long time in Barmulloch area. Younger TuneSpeak participants and referral partners, young people. And so participants received a really robust art kit bag, which included really good quality materials, and that allowed them to take part in the artist designed activities. So we planned to make up and deliver 300 packs and 6 weeks of activities. We actually delivered 1,728 and 10 weeks of activities. So that programme just grew and grew. I should say we couldn't have done it. One of the things about this one that was extraordinary was our reliance on the physical partners who were in Barmulloch to take a vast amount of, I'm sorry to say, it was quite a lot of Amazon ordering had to go on. But, you know, we had to get them to receive masses of information, of materials, and then actually help us put these packs together, because most of us were not actually in Glasgow from the core team. Digital access to digital creativity resonates with what Paul was talking about in the Barron's programme, but this was our response to a world which became predominantly digital and therefore less accessible to many of our participants. So it was designed to help young people get online, remove financial and technological barriers, and provide support, guidance and tools to get creative. And we also actually, through the funding we had, I should have said that was terrible of me. All of this was funded through supporting communities through the Scottish Government. And so what we were able to do with this one was actually a really key thing, was actually hire a digital coordinator, because this was another thing in terms of bridging this gap. You can give people an iPad, but if they haven't got somebody at home who's used to using Apple, they will just get stuck and become really disenfranchised and disempowered very, very quickly. So it was really key for us to have this expert on our team, Enya, who actually spent a considerable amount of time with people. So we'd expected it to be appealing to ages 14 to 17, which is a huge part of the cohort of TuneSpeak. It actually changed completely, and it really is true that we did actually have sessions with a 1-year-old on Zoom who wanted to know how to work a little tool that we'd found for early years. So it really was from 1 to 24. So the engagement from vulnerable families was very high, 102, and the equipment included actually bundles to support younger siblings. And this was a really key thing, because actually what happens when you're doing a Zoom call with a young person from TuneSpeak, what we noticed was there would be other people in the background. So what we would have would be a younger sibling sitting on the sofa going, I want one of those, quite rightly. So we actually realized that it was something that we needed to address. So we actually did family bundles and have continued to support people. And some of those actually were quite large things. So laptops and bundles of tablets. And we were able to do this due to the flexibility of the fund. So it included 178 referrals from partner organisations, and this is a really key part. That is far higher than the number of referrals that we would have normally had. What happened next? So we'd originally conceived this response programme as something standalone, a programme that would only exist in the time of the pandemic, something that we would naturally move away from and get beyond as we entered into what we'd called our recovery phase. However, the learning has been huge, and in response to that, in responding, we've become more responsive to the core needs of our participants. Through Zoom, we've been invited into their homes and their lives. This was the staged report that we had, the staged process that we had thought we would move through. We would be in response, then we would be in recovery, and then like phoenixes from the flames, it would be this marvellous renewed programme. So what's changed for us? So we've continued with Creative Camp beyond the funded period and have actually only recently wound this down. The need for it has changed as restrictions have lifted. We've continued with digital creativity, supporting young people to connect and create, and we still have equipment and data to distribute and support people to use. We're continuing to progress young people through one-to-one interventions and have begun to physically meet them through our progression associate. We're continuing to rethink how we evidence our work, challenging our past mode of evaluation, which concentrated on monitoring. The workforce, so this one's been such a huge concern for all of us, I know, but pre-COVID we relied on a smaller number of really highly skilled community artists to deliver our weekly classes. So we're now employing an increasing number of specialist artists who were not normally available to us. And that's international artists as well. And that's really greatly enhanced our progression of young people. The team, a very key thing, we've learned to be more mindful of each other and to be actively caring and active in supporting each other's well-being. What does it all mean? I'm not going to pretend. I'm not actually sitting here today knowing how it will all land, and that can still feel uncomfortable. It is still actually difficult as I'm sitting here to plan with certainty. To TuneSpeak, what we'd thought of as a linear journey through response, recovery and renewal is in fact much deeper, and it may actually see some departure from what was the standard programme, but is actually stronger than ever in delivering the mission and upholding the values. And that's the really key part for me. We're more youth-led than ever before. Young people are actually able to choose their individual path through the digital one-to-one sessions, and the missing R in each stage that we're building more formally into our planning is reflection. The now and the future. So I just wanted to share a little bit about what we've actually been doing as we come out of the kind of the period of hard lockdown that we've been under. So we've just finished Protest Lab, and that's a performance-led film project with the theme of climate change. And that's been running for 3 weeks of the summer holidays. And that's the first time we've worked on a film as our main summer piece of work. We would normally be taking over a theatre and delivering a theatre ensemble piece. So this is interesting because we feel more confident to offer and deliver digitally, having had the experience of the last year. Culture Collective, we're absolutely over the moon for this, but the success of our partnership and the delivery of the response programme led us to make an application to host a cultural collective. And these are these marvellous programmes that are funded through Creative Scotland. And this will develop a really large scale piece of work in summer 2022 for the whole of Ward 17. Again, this is the largest project that TuneSpeak have ever in their history undertaken. And so that's just really exciting. And I don't feel we would have done that if we hadn't actually had the experience of the previous year. We've got a new term that we're planning for the autumn. So we know now a lot about the vagaries of planning and the stop-start of delivering work in COVID. We know we can pivot and, if necessary, pirouette. If in all this, we've really seen the value of physically coming together. So we will be aiming to introduce more physical work, but we will retain some digital in our work. It's about finding the right balance and the blend for our participants, our staff and our spaces. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hazel, for that. And like many of the events we've had, the sort of the long-term learning that we've all gone through is having long-term implications, improving the practice that a lot of organisations are engaged in. And I also appreciate you sharing from the, I suppose, the perspective of changing of your reaction to caring for the people you work with, the young people you work with, but also the impact it had on you as an organisation, I suppose, and the doubts, you know, what is our purpose in all this scenario? And I think that's something that a lot of organisations have had to go through, but also come out of it maybe a bit more robust and being able to focus on core values while adapting them as well. We're now going to swiftly move on to our final speaker of the first section of this morning, and we're going to hear from Vanessa van Scherpenzeel, and Scherpenzeel, sorry, Vanessa, who is from Plantation Productions. So over to you, Vanessa. Chris is sharing your presentation.
That's great. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. What I'm going to be doing this morning is just give you an oversight of our Creative Steps program. We have had to change our program as well during COVID, which I think we've done very well considering lots of constraints. However, we are now gradually going back to our original program again, which is hopefully what you'll get an idea of today with the PowerPoint presentation. This presentation is very much based on how can embedding artistic approaches enable communities to become agents for change. We look very closely within our project at individuals and how this peer support model that we work with, how people can support each other, but also how the crafts can support people and enable them to learn new skills, but pass those skills on also and understand the benefit of learning new skills that can become transferable, for instance, in everyday situations as cooking as well. Now, if it's okay just to see the next slide. Great, thank you very much. So what we do very closely in Creative Steps is the creative participation and peer support to promote positive mental health. That's the key message that we work with. The positive psychology that results from being creative has a powerful impact, making us aware of our capabilities. Now, this is all very low key. We start off with people. In step one, we go to health centers and we work there with a small group of people for 8 weeks, and it's a program that they get offered, so it's within their local community. Then we gradually bring them within our Gallery 966. Here we look at combining groups together, combining people together, and we work very much with the peer support model here. Interventions that help us to see the positive impact. I'm smiling because I can't actually read the full screen. So I don't know how to get myself away from, oh, here we go, got myself away. So I can't see myself now anymore, that's great. Interventions that help us to see the positive around us, helps people look at life with optimism. Now, this is one of the key things that we work with very closely. We look at people and we look at how to support them to create a structure within their day, which then should also create more of a structure within their week. That's one of the main things that people seem to struggle with when they come with us. When that is combined with building supportive friendship, so this is the peer support model, we see significant changes. If it's okay, we'll see the next slide. Great, thank you.
Plantation Productions is an award-winning charity based in Govan in Glasgow, and as part of our wider remit, we deliver the Creative Steps programme for positive mental health. The development of this programme has placed people with lived experience at the heart of the process. A key theme that emerged was that people needed a supported route back into the community. So this has shaped a 3-step model of engagement, which begins by taking creative courses out to people in health settings and thereafter supports them back into the community.
This is great. Thank you very much. So what we do with the step 1 is, this is actually the film was taken in Gallery 966 in Govan. Now, this is actually our step 2 program. So this is where people have already either met each other through the health centre, or they've gained new friendships within our gallery, and people will come to a weekly class once a week. And again, as I mentioned, it's very low key crafts what we offer. It's things that they can take home, things that they can show others perhaps how to make it, but also very much creating confidence and creating a feeling of aspiring to the next session and learning skills, new skills yet again. If it's okay to see the next slide, please.
And the film?
It's actually the number 4.
No.
Oh, no. That's okay. We can roll with number 5.
We've lost it. Sorry. Back.
That's okay. Oh, yes. Here we go. Oh.
No.
No. That's okay. We can go for number 5 then.
Video?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Working with Tina at Creative Steps to look at the social value of the project. Impacts for healthcare providers are all around helping improve people's mental health and well-being, and also help people manage their own conditions, which is a really important benefit for healthcare providers. So our study has really worked to identify the social impact of Creative Steps, and we found real value and concrete evidence of value to people and to public services.
Great, thank you. Okay, what we also do, so step 1 is within the health centre, step 2 is in with the Gallery 966. What we do there is, it's a programme that isn't 6 weeks or 6 months, and which is a lovely aspect because it means people can take their own time within step 2. Within step 2, they can gradually become more confident, and once they are ready to, they can continue on to step 3. Step 3 is the wider community. This is where people will learn to use their artistic skills that they've gained and either continue in another, maybe it's a photography class, maybe it's a singing class, maybe it's whatever class it is, they would go into a step 3 program. If it's okay to see the next slide.
Step 3 is wider opportunities. We have photography, a community choir, Govan All Sorts, sewing groups, and you can even become a volunteer within the programme.
When I started, I was very nervous of it all. I hadn't done anything like it before, but once I was into it, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and every time I can't wait to do the next thing. Maureen, like I say, is super. You know, she'll help you with anything. She'll take you on a journey that at the end of it, you've got something special. I've come a long way.
I've been working with Tina.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
We will.
Step 3 is wider opportunity.
Maureen, like I say, is super. You know, she'll help you with anything. She'll take you on a journey that at the end of it, you've got something special. I've come a long way since doing the very first square.
I never left the house for nearly 2 years. I had no confidence, and knitting and crocheting was just something very much for myself. My CPA enjoyed me for the first 3 weeks, and then that gave me a wee bit of confidence where I could come back on my own. It naturally progressed, where coming from somebody just sitting to showing to now being able to teach and teach other groups as well. So it's been a nice progression.
That's great. Thank you very much. I think what I'll do is I'll talk you through the next couple of slides that I've got here. What we also wanted to show you was the positive experience, and that is key to change. We've reported that 90% of our people reported an improvement in supportive friendship. 88% reported an improved sense of purpose. 88% also reported improved confidence. 85% reported an increased ability to learn new skills. And 83% reported self-esteem. We work on all these key targets within every session that we bring people in. Now, we have also got, what I'll do is I'll just again talk you through the next slide. I appreciate you don't see it, but I do, so I'll tell you it. Our strategy and theory of change. We work with social prescribing. We work with making people feel engaged, feeling of achievement. And what did we do to change, or what did we aim to change as a result of this project? People experiencing a mental health condition are better able to manage their own condition. They are reconnecting with society, contributing to the community, and living a more fulfilling life. Therefore, participants have improved mental health and well-being and have increased their capacity to live with the flexibility and resilience to deal with life's everyday challenges. As a beneficial side effect, the ripple effect. Now, people feeling inspired and inspiring others within their network, be that family, friends, or community, to engage within the arts. If it's okay to see the next video slide, please.
With the group.
Thank you.
We did some dream catches, and the ladies really liked them. And Amy and Tina asked me if I would actually volunteer to take a dream catcher class. So I said yes, and we started it. It was great fun. When I got asked to take the class, it was an absolute lifesaver. It couldn't have came at a better time. And hopefully after the new year, we're going to have some more classes. We're going to teach the ladies how to make cheese alive.
It has been a really valuable service that we've been able to provide for individuals. It's been a really rare occasion that we would get that opportunity to work jointly with community resources. So Creative Steps has helped us provide that link to get individuals to engage in activity again, and something that's leisure-led, something that they can enjoy, and something that's creative. And part of that engagement of that group is really been to help to make the link between community resources and psychiatric services.
What we've been doing has been inviting Creative Steps to come into the health centre and to run the jewellery programme to start off with from here, their 8-week programme. It's quite a new thing in terms of that the doctors have never really had a lot of involvement with outside agencies, just purely because of the pressures of the work and the work that they're doing. By starting off in the health centre where they're comfortable, where they come regularly and having your group there, they've then felt able to move on to the community groups. And then when they're moving on to the groups in the community, they're going somewhere regularly, and I've seen people start to actually build friendships from that, which was what was kind of maybe lacking in their life before.
The fact that the group isn't just like a 6 months or 6 weeks is really good, because you really get a chance to build up like relationships and get used to what's happening.
Great, thank you very much. What I'll do is I'll try and see if oh, here we go. Here we've got the last slide. The slide is here. I was going to ask you to visualize a plant and a tree and a bumblebee, but you don't have to do that now. So what we're going to do is, this is really our 3 steps. So we plant the seeds through artistic approaches. Then we provide a nurturing environment through our peer support model, creating a sense of community. And then step 3, with newly discovered confidence and awareness, we encourage exploring the world around us, which then leads to change. This is actually, a lot of these clips have been taken from a video, which what I'll try to do is, if I can see if I can get the link, and then if it's possible, I could maybe share that with Emma then to be shared wider again. that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Apologies for some of the technical difficulties. The nature of Zoom means that these can happen, but it also means that Vanessa has been able to join us from outside the country. Thank you very much. That was a really good illustration of the step process, and I think your key symbols at the end of the journey that you take people through in a very gentle way so that they are actually teachers themselves. It was a really good example of the nature of the work that you do on this project through Plantation. So we've heard from our three speakers this morning. I'm very happy to open it to the floor and take any questions from the audience for our speakers. If you want to raise your hand and show us yourself on video, or raise your hand using the mechanism. Ruby, you have done both.
Hello. I'd like to speak to Hazel. Hello, Hazel. Long time no see. Lovely to see you, hear your project, and thank you everyone for hearing the project. I have lots of things to take away. But Hazel, I was curious, and I don't know if this is for you to answer because it might be more coming from the arts therapists, because I was intrigued as a kind of dance movement therapist myself to find out about how the creative and calm, what were the barriers that were met, that the one-to-one service potentially didn't kind of take up, and it became more of a family service, and just what you might know of that.
Yeah, I'll try. This is, sorry everybody, but I haven't seen Ruby for such a long time, so that's just wonderful. You look exactly the same on some level, which is freaking me out, but there we go. So I think, yeah, what we'd thought it would be, Ruby, was much more about an intervention that was around anxiety. And then the idea was that they would have that time with one of the three therapists, and then we would actually move them on, if they wanted, to the digital access to creativity. But what actually happened, I think, was two things. Just to build up that trust with the therapist took longer than we had thought. That was a great bit of learning. But also, I think what we were experiencing was what the young people were coming with was actually issues that they were having because they were locked down in tiny flats with no garden, with no access to any outside kind of stimulus or places to go. So actually that was partly, I would say for some, that's where the kind of family involvement came into. I mean, I would say one of the key challenging things was actually that although we had been at peace with the idea of doing some art therapy, a certain level of intervention, we were not offering deep psychological, and that was one of the key things, was keeping the art in it, and then at the same time actually through one of the particular therapists who we're lucky enough to have to work with us, she specialises in adverse childhood experiences and ACEs and in trauma, and where she was able to recognise that with a particular parent, we did actually take the decision to intervene differently, but we separated that from the programme. I mean, in many ways you could say, what on earth were we doing and why did I okay that? But it was for a very simple reason. We couldn't refer on anybody. There was no services. So I think sometimes, and I think arts organisations and community focused organisations are excellent at that, because we all actually give a shit, I meant to say care, about people very deeply. So, you know, for me, that was part of the pivot. I can see Paul nodding as well. I think it is that thing of, you know, we had part of the pivot was to go to where the need was. And sometimes with the individuals, that was a point of crisis that was unimaginable, and we just could not leave that. Have I answered that at all, Ruby?
Well, it's just been lovely hearing you. You have. I was intrigued to kind of see what, to hear a bit more about what happened through that program. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Ruby.
Paul, I noticed you nodding to that. Did you have anything to add to that?
Not much. It's an excellent answer. Rather than to just say, it's obvious that in the past year, our capacities have been dramatically reduced by the inability to reach people the way we used to. And that's very important, that the frustration of needing to help and needing to provide, that we are probably feeling as if we're trying to do too much. And arts organisations have a therapeutic role, but they are not therapists. And we can't provide a complete solution for everybody. What we can and should be doing is working more deeply in collaboration with other professionals in the healthcare system, for example, so that we understand how our jigsaw piece fits into somebody else's life, rather than trying to solve everything.
That's a good point. Actually, in our first shared learning, Street League talked about going through something very similar in becoming much more aware of home circumstances of the young people they were dealing with, but being aware that they need to stay, I think she said, stay in our lane. She said, we knew what we could do, but we needed to make sure that we then matched the right people with the right professionals so that they got the support that they need, because they were sports professionals or fitness professionals, but they were not therapists themselves, but their engagement meant that they had a much higher awareness, and they'd all received a lot more training around becoming aware of what some of their audiences, the people they were engaging with, what their needs were. Any more questions from anyone in the audience? Someone is asking in the box, they're having technical difficulties, but they're saying, can participants self-refer to all the services mentioned by the speakers? And how would my service get our participants involved in these programs? That's from Gillian Connolly.
The answer is, from a Glasgow Badden's point of view, yes, you can self-refer. We do this all the time. Even though we work with agencies like, for example, Turning Point in Govan, who deal with people with complex needs, if somebody is on the journey of recovery from addiction at any stage in that journey, then they can approach us and come on board. There we have referral systems, but you can self-refer.
Vanessa, how does that work with you?
Yes, self-referral is absolutely part of our program as well. At this moment of time, we've got a waiting list though, so but absolutely self-referral is absolutely possible. It's just at this moment of time. Yeah. And just maybe to get back to Ruby's question as well, that was one of the things that we came across as well, is within our Zoom sessions, it's very difficult to keep that line, but also you are as so my background is actually in art therapy. I've got a degree in art therapy, and one of the things that as an art therapist you make sure is that the space, you create the right space. And now when you're online, you have to create that virtual space, which is in everybody's living room. So it's impossible to contain really as such. However, you have to try. So we had a lot of times where people, perhaps background noises, or indeed people would get upset. And it is very difficult to handle that then, but it means as a facilitator, you need to even step up even more, I think. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Vanessa. And Hazel, what about you? Can people self-refer?
Yes, we'd be delighted to hear from anybody. 0 to 25 we work with. Obviously, we don't expect babies to call in themselves, but if they do, we'll try and respond.
Okay, thanks very much. So, Gillian, you have an answer that everyone accepts self-referral. Rebecca, you have your hand up.
Hiya. Hearing about how organisations kind of like support vulnerable groups and kind of like maybe unexpected challenges that may arise. I was wondering if any of the groups kind of like write in positions from the beginning of their projects for workers such as like specifically trained youth workers, or like people who are trained in kind of like dealing with like adverse childhood experiences, or people dealing with people working with folk who are, you know, experiencing other issues such as like mental health problems or addictions. And if you do write those roles into the project, how do you kind of know which expertise you're going to need? I hope that makes sense. Felt a bit rambly.
Who wants to take that one?
Could I have a go?
Hazel?
Vanessa? Sorry, that wasn't very confidence inspiring. I'll have a go at answering that. Yes. So yes, is the answer, Vanessa? Yes, every job description that we had for our programs was carefully worked out. And they did differ a little bit from the kind of work that we would normally do. So one of the bits of training and something that we had to write into everything was digital safeguarding. So that was a really different thing. So we had to design a training program for that, which we then gave to all of the staff that were working on that program, and that was a very useful thing, it turned out, because again, I don't think people realized how much of their work was going to have to be delivered in that way. So we were really happy to do that. All of our job, everybody who works for us has a job description. That's a thing that we do. And within that, we contextualize our work quite carefully. So when we're interviewing people, we actually always ask a question about challenging situations that they've been in. We try to understand if they really understand what modern poverty looks like and the different layers of that. And we don't not employ people if they don't have that, for goodness sake, but it gives us a sense of the sort of training and support and mentoring indeed that they might need to cope with that. Because if you've not done it before, it's very, very hard mentally. I think it's very hard for people to know the boundaries. I think that COVID's made that even worse. So actually, interestingly, a lot of the really experienced people that we've worked with before, you know, they've been wonderful, and they've mentored some of the newer creative staff that we've had in, because it is hard. And you haven't got that lovely piece at the end of you know, when you're producing something where you would normally come together and actually reflect together and individually. And so I think that missing bit, Vanessa, has been a real challenge. Yeah. Have I answered that, my dear?
Yeah. I think that was really helpful. And I guess another question, I mean, I'd be keen to hear from the other speakers as well, but is that something that you make really explicit when you're applying for funds, or is it something that you kind of leave more open with the knowledge that you will use it for those kind of areas as and when they arise throughout the projects? And again, that's to all the speakers as well, but happy to hear what you think about that, Hazel.
I'll just say it's very explicit for us, Vanessa, but I think you've kind of posed and answered your own question there cleverly, because actually a lot of the funds, and some of the funds that came up during COVID, quite rightly, I felt, because it's public money, we're asking for a level of detail, which actually I think was quite helpful, because it forced us to really, really think this through, actually make sure that we're not making any assumptions about the skills that people will need and the knowledge and support that they'll need around that.
Paul and Vanessa, do you have anything?
I think I would briefly just add to all of that. Because we provide largely music-led training, and it's not music therapy, it's music primarily, then, for example, I look for lived experience. So for musicians in exile, for example, we have one person who is now a paid facilitator of the group. He was a member of the group as a refugee, but when he first came to the group, he was an asylum seeker. So he's been on that personal journey of lived experience that allows him to have the insight about what the group members have been through in their trauma and their asylum process, which is another trauma, and then possibly even the possibility of getting residential status in Great Britain, which is another trauma on top of all of that. So I think because music is such a highly specialized field, I don't at this stage in the organization's development expect access awareness or other aspects like that, but we will build that in as we develop the ensemble, as we develop the group. The primary mechanism of engagement is lived experience through music.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And Vanessa?
Creative Steps program, actually, we work very closely with the NHS. So if we have any specific mental health help that we need, then it would be through CPNs, or it would be through the GP, through the original referral system. we're not able to support individuals in that way. And so therefore we don't also create jobs, I suppose, like that, because we can have one group pre-COVID, it was up to 20 people in one group. And I have actually tried from my own background then to facilitate a more therapeutic and it's session, and it's with 20 people. That's just not, it's not safe to do, actually. That's it. So although we are now working with smaller groups, so it might be that in the future, potentially other jobs would open up in that sense or would be created in that sense. But at this moment of time, it's not how the program is needing to work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. And Rebecca, I'd say that was a good question, because that was a question I had in my mind, because all of you have talked about adapting to things as they have gone along. And I think actually, Hazel, you talked about realising something wasn't working, and so actually adapting practice to respond to the needs of the audience. So actually, I was also wondering the same question, particularly when you're looking at funding, for funding particularly niche support. So thanks very much for the question, Rebecca. Today's, the award that we're talking around creativity in regeneration is sponsored by the Scottish Government, but also by Creative Scotland. And while we've been hearing from local place-based projects so far this morning, we're now going to hear from Karen Dick from Creative Scotland about where they are in their agenda, maybe how they've coped with COVID, but more looking at what their agenda is for the forthcoming couple of years. And Karen, over to you.
Thanks, Ewan, and I will just attempt to share my screen, and hopefully you will all be able to see the presentation. Excellent. Great. So I'm Karen Dick. I know many of you, I think, on the call, but for those of you that I don't know, I'm the Head of Place Partnerships and Communities at Creative Scotland. And Place Partnerships and Communities is the team that we're in the Strategy Directorate, and we deal a lot with place-based activity, regeneration, working with towns, working with local authorities and culture trusts, and also about sort of community-engaged creative practice. We're the lead for the in Creative Scotland for the Culture Collective programme and also for our Place Partnerships programme. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about Creative Scotland's strategic framework, and which is just actually been announced through our new annual plan, a little bit about the National Culture Strategy and the points in that which relate back to including artistic expertise and practice within to help engender change, and I might be able to speak properly as well, and then come back and talk a little bit more about Culture Collective, which you've heard from Toon Speak earlier, who are one of the 26 organisations involved in that programme. So Creative Scotland's strategic framework, this has been announced through our new annual plan, and it is a change from how we have perhaps maybe developed and delivered things in the past. This is informed by the various crises and various changes that are taking place in the world today. So whether it is the impact and the ongoing and the future impact of COVID-19 and the ways that we have had to adapt and change, the ways that the arts and cultural sector have had to adapt and change over the past 18 months or so, and also the impact that has for future delivery of services, how audiences want to engage with arts and culture, and also how they might want to participate and co-create in things in the future. But it is also about addressing the climate emergency, the continued and unacceptable levels of inequality and discrimination across society, and how we have an opportunity now to reframe, to look again at what we're doing, to look at how we can support organisations and individuals flexibly, and how we can take things forward, bearing in mind all of the changes and things we've just done over the last 16 months. So Creative Scotland now, what we want to see, we want to see more organisations working in the arts that are supported to make work of quality. We want people from across all parts of society to be able to access and participate and create arts and creativity, and also art and creativity being recognised abroad, at home, as well as at home, as part of being a central part of our nation. And that's not really a change. That's something that we've always had within our priorities and within our statements. So how we are going to do this, our priorities are equalities, diversity and inclusion. And that is about supporting a diverse range of creative people and communities across Scotland. And it is about an equality and an equity of opportunity to create, participate and engage. So this equality, diversity and inclusion has always been a fundamental part of what Creative Scotland does, but we are making it very clear now that this is one of our main priorities for future. We will also be prioritising sustainable development. And then often when we talk about sustainable development, people think of that as meaning about economy or the ability for an organisation to develop and grow their business. But we are including within sustainable development, looking at actually tackling the climate emergency and looking at sustainable creative businesses, whether that is around succession planning, employment, or around economic sustainability. Our third priority here, and these are in no particular order, is fair work, and that is about fair pay and not just ensuring that people are paid according to at least rates of their relevant unions if they have them, but also about fair conditions and employment opportunities, because quite often, as has been raised earlier on in this discussion, finding opportunities in the arts which truly enable people to work and live either in the place that they want to do or to live as an artist are really few and far between. And we also have a priority around international, which again is looking at how we can develop innovative and sustainable ways of working internationally and collaborating, bearing in mind what we've just talked about around climate and the impact of COVID. So I'm going to talk very quickly about funding because it does relate back to all of this. Our funding from the National Lottery and Scottish Government supports individuals and organisations, and it will support a vast range of activity, whether that is around professional development, to creating new work, to supporting organisations, festivals and programmes, to engage programmes of engagement that really work and collaborate with individuals and organisations. I'm not going to talk very much more about funding because at this point in time, we're actually just about to close our existing open fund for individuals, and it will be reopening as a digital online process in order to better support individuals and to offer advice and support. We will be working, as we had started prior to March 2020, to revise our funding support for organisations in order to make that better, more equitable, and to bring in some of the learning and development that we have had over the past 16 to 18 months, driven by the COVID emergency, but also tying into wider policy developments in both Creative Scotland and in the national approach to supporting culture. And on that, I'm just going to move on to talking a bit about the National Culture Strategy. So this is the National Culture Strategy developed by the Scottish Government with a lot of collaboration and input from the arts and cultural sector. So the key points in the National Culture Strategy include strengthening culture, transforming through culture, and empowering through culture. And I'm just going to put it out on this slide, which I'm not going to recite. There are a few quotes and points within the National Culture Strategy that come back to how people take part in cultural activity and creativity, and how artistic and creative practices can support change and development in communities, places, for organisations, for individuals. So quite often, if culture and heritage projects are place-based and local, they are a way for other organisations and for others to be able to engage directly with communities through those organisations who have that unique and embedded relationship with a community already. And there is the potential, therefore, that some of those organisations, the way they work, particularly the organisations that have been shortlisted and have been successful in winning the Creative Regeneration Award through SURF in the past, and also the people you've just heard from just now, a lot of the work is about helping people to have a greater say in their cultural life, whether it is their own individual cultural life or whether it is the life of their communities. However, it's not just about culture, and it's not just about creativity and art. It is about, it can be about, and for example, here in one of these quotes, it can help communities to visualise and understand the impacts of climate change and provide leadership and support communities to be able to have a voice, to empower them, and to be able to enable them to make change where they might not have been able to do that before. And I'm going to jump on now just to Culture Collective. As Hazel mentioned earlier, Culture Collective is a COVID-19 relief fund supported by Scottish Government with £6 million of funding over 18 months. And 26 organisations are currently delivering individual projects and programmes relating to that. However, the point of Culture Collective is to develop a network of creative practitioners, organisations and communities all working collaboratively together to shape the future cultural life of their community, to make a difference, to make a change, to be led by the artists and communities working together with the support of those organisations who are embedded within those communities. As a COVID-19 relief fund, it was very focused on providing employment opportunities for creative practitioners because those had been absolutely ripped away from the impact of COVID on all of that type of work, as in other places as well. But Culture Collective isn't just about those 26 organisations individually. It is about them working together collectively to make a change, to test new models of engagement, of delivery, to learn from each other, to learn from other areas of best practice in working and co-creating with communities, and also to share and adapt either what they are doing or help others to undertake those ways of working which are best practice about putting a community at the heart of the work that they're doing, whether that is around creative regeneration, whether it is around addressing local challenges and issues or opportunities, whether it is many of the organisations and projects that are being developed will likely focus on climate change or the impact of COVID or other vital parts of our society at the moment. And the key thing about Culture Collective is that the outcomes were not defined. It's up to the organisations, the creative practitioners and the communities to bring those individual objectives together to help us form the whole of what this type of work, whether you call it socially engaged or participatory or community engaged creative practice, can help to make a difference, and a real difference to people's lives and people's communities. And so I'm going to end with a clear, opportunity to show a picture of a George Wiley question mark in the Clyde, looking over at Dumbarton Rock, and with a couple of email addresses. If you have any questions for me or for our Creative Scotland or Inquiries team, we can pick them up there. Just drop me a line and I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And those slides will be available later so that you can look at them at your leisure and rather than my whistle-stop tour of it.
Thank you very much, Karen. that was great to hear from your perspective as a national umbrella organisation for the creative sector. Do we have any questions for Karen from our audience or from our fellow panel members? I have a question for you, Karen. I suppose actually partly because we've heard some reflections on the impact on organisations of the past 18 months. I suppose you, as a national organisation, you tend to be viewed as one big homogenous lump, and we're not very good at recognising the stresses that the individuals within institutions face. How would you say, what's it been like at Creative Scotland? Because obviously you've been impacted the same way as everyone else, but you've obviously had money pumped through you. That can't have come, which everyone thinks is a lovely thing, but that doesn't come without stresses. So what's it been like for the organisation?
I think it's, as colleagues, or as our chief exec wrote in a blog, we've delivered a significant amount more in numbers of applications and awards and money that has come through us than we have ever done. And we've done it all working from home, like everyone else, building systems as we went along. If anyone here that applied to Culture Collective will be able to attest, that was one of our first trials of an online application system, which wasn't as straightforward as some of the bursary programmes, which were pretty much send us your information. If you meet the sort of very, very short criteria, then we will give money out to you. But wanting to get funding, changing things, stopping things, ensuring that people that had awards and funding already were able to adapt and change and use the funding that they had been given, even though they were looking at cancelling festivals and cancelling everything that they've been planning for, sometimes for years. A lot of that, being able to do that, to sort of spend the first couple of days before lockdown last year, sitting in small rooms with your colleagues, trying to figure out just how we could change things and what we could do, what we could not need, how we were going to get money out without being able to have people signing contracts, and really moving really quickly to do things while also being in the same situation as everyone else. I think having that, personally, I think having something to focus on was really helpful for us, because it gave you something to do. You had a real need to make something happen to help people, as colleagues have said. That need to be there to make sure that we were able to respond and to get money out to people, quite frankly, was really useful, because certainly from my point of view, I don't spend most of my life sitting at a desk in Edinburgh. I spend most of my life in other parts of Scotland, visiting people, seeing things, and finding out about the excellent work that people are doing. So that bit has been really strange, and it's not something, particularly not when you're looking at place-based activity, it's not something that you find replicates well online. Certainly don't have the off-the-cuff conversations and ability to help people who would never think of talking to Creative Scotland when you bump into them at a funding fair in Glenrothes. You can't really replicate that online. And so for all that some of the online activities and everything have helped us reach out to people that might not have been able to attend things in the past, I know that we're also missing people that could otherwise have been talking to us if we'd been in Irvine or Forres or in all the other parts of Scotland that I'm usually in. But being able to do things like this and still have conversations with people, and then to do things that we've probably wanted to do for some time, like Culture Collective, and now we have the ability to deliver it, and that people wanted to be part of it too, I think is a real, something that I'm really looking forward to developing, and also getting out to see once we can. And once we don't,
we're all looking forward to getting out and witnessing things in the flesh. I suppose a follow-up question that I would have for you is, a lot of Hazel referred to the and we've heard it consistently both in the earlier work that SURF did and work that I did in my previous job, about people really being grateful to funders for being very relaxed about how people spent agreed funding when things suddenly blew up in the way that they did, and accepting higher levels of risk. And I suppose that is the thing that everyone hears about, you know, can we manage that going forward? And I think how do you think, how easy is it going to be for you to navigate that, to be relaxed about adjustability and funding as we return to whatever is next, while still making sure that people are accountable for how we spend public money?
I think that's a really good question. It's one of the reasons why the second half of our sort of funding review for how we fund organisations isn't happening at the same time as the individuals one, so that because we're testing various things, we know that you know, what we want to develop with organisations has been very much, or with individuals, has been very much informed from how we were working through the bursaries and through the support for creative freelancers, and looking at how things that we'd wanted to change in the future, or in the past for future anyway. But I think it's that sort of how we are flexible. We have always actually been flexible. If people need to change things and need to make adjustments to what their projects are, as long as it's not wholesale, completely different things, then we've always been quite happy to do that. Certainly, I'm definitely quite happy to be led by the project and what they need to do. But it's about making sure that people are confident and encouraged to be able to talk to us, rather than being worried about oh dear, what we must deliver, what the funder has said, when quite often it's, we want your project to be a success and we want what you're doing to be a success. So if you need to talk to us and change things, please do. There will be somebody there that will be happy to talk to you about it. But trying to keep that flexibility that we had, particularly for organisations to address change, to flex, to adapt for circumstances, we're still going to need to do that for some time, because things will still be a bit changeable for the next wee while. So we will be looking at trying to build that into the next round of funding. I can't promise that it will be as flexible as it was, but we're certainly taking the learning from how we've worked over the past year and a bit forward into how we might work in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. That's it. I mean, I think it's about communication, and I think actually some of the things that we've heard from some of the other panelists around, I suppose, being kind to each other, which we maybe are with people that are using our services, but also the relationship between organisations. One of the things that I was delighted to hear you all talk about, I mean, I suppose a brief reflection of what I've heard here today, which the broad similarity is the person-centred focus from our delivery partners, and the community-centred focus from you, Karen, so that you're looking at sort of stage levels there, and that's obviously the best way of working, so that people are empowered and can make a difference. And I was also delighted to hear references to climate change, regardless of COP26. And I suppose it's an area that I'm very interested for SURF to do more work in. On the final day of our annual conference is looking at climate change and regeneration. What do you, I suppose specifically this is maybe for Hazel and Paul, because you both have projects in the pipeline that are looking at climate change, and I suppose I'm specifically interested in climate change and the intersection with poverty and what that means. What do you think your projects are going to reveal?
What do I think the projects are going to reveal? I think what we first have to do is to challenge false narratives, and to challenge the idea that this doesn't matter. We know that people who are the poorest in our society are going to be the ones who are going to feel the impact of the climate emergency first and most severely. Even though that may not be manifesting this year, in the coming years it certainly will. So to find a narrative that people can listen to, and I use the example, for example, of Scottish hip hop, which is on a level that comes from the working class, and which has a very strong poverty narrative in Scotland already. I think that I can't do that job. I'm not a rapper, but I know the people who do, and I support them in developing and interrogating the assumptions, the QAnon thinking that exists, and breaking down the barriers to try and drive home the facts.
Great answer. Thanks very much, Paul. Hazel, what do you think your film project's going to?
Well, I mean, it's kind of been revealed, just not to me, I think, it would be the key, because it's being edited just now. So, but quite deliberately, it was something there was thinking about this when Karen was talking about. I think it's been so strange. I haven't been along to any of the filming of this at all. For the first time in my entire creative career, I've got no idea what the young people have done with the artists, because I was just going to be adding an additional body during the time when we're still distancing. So in a way, I'm really I'm loving the fact that I don't know, and they want to reveal it when they're ready, and I respect that. But I'm really interested to see. I mean, I was asked if I could source some very strange things, which have intrigued me. But I think actually Paul's hit the nail on the head, though. It is this thing about authentic message, and so in many ways I think it possibly won't be that we talk about climate change. We'll have to find the different ways in there that are authentically the things that people are worrying about, but a lot of what they are worrying about, we know, is actually related to climate change and the climate emergency. So yeah, watch the space. You'll all have to look up our website, and we will look forward to it. And the link to Protest Lab, whatever it is.
Don't worry, we'll be widely sharing that when it comes out. And I suppose we both need to touch on the point. One of our speakers in August is talking about the absence of the working class voice in the climate change discussion, and it's how we make sure that they aren't excluded, and that they are part of the solutions to some of the mitigation things that we'll definitely have to be looking at. And Karen has also shared some other extra information in the chat there. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Emma to wind up our event for us this morning.
Thank you. And so firstly, just to thank all of our speakers, Paul, Hazel, Vanessa and Karen, for giving their time today. Following on from the event today, I think there was a couple of questions about presentations and recordings. So I will send a link to everyone by the end of today to the presentations and the other materials, and also to a recording on our YouTube channel. So that will be available this afternoon. So just before we wind up, I'm going to do some shameless adverts. I've just stuck a couple of links in the chat bar just for some other SURF activity. So if you just bear with me 2 seconds to share my screen. Obviously, one of those is the SURF Awards. So this year's SURF Awards launched on the 3rd of June with a creative project at the Glasgow Canal. This year's image is a bear. So we've had lots of images in the past. Last year we had the kind of chameleon for the changing nature of projects. This year we have a bear, in the hopes that we're coming out of hibernation like bears do, and that the world may have changed round about us, and we can adapt to that as bears do each year as they come out, particularly given the climate emergency. So we're open for applications until 5 p.m. on Monday, the 6th of September. The 5 categories are just there on the screen, and they remain the same as last year. And we're delighted to have Creative Scotland sponsor the Creative Regeneration Award again. We are hoping that we will have, fingers crossed, a physical dinner this year, and the projects from last year do get to come to this year's dinner, and that will be in the Grand Central again on the Thursday the 9th of December. So you can look out for some information on that. There's information on the SURF Awards on our website, just at the link there, and I've put that in the chat bar, but I manage the process. I'm always happy to answer any questions or have a discussion about potential applications, so you can drop me an email at any time before Monday the 6th. Just a wee bit about SURF membership. A lot of you are members, but if you're not, then membership is £50 for an organisation and £20 for community groups and individuals. It's a free way to promote your activities. You can get involved in some of our consultation policy responses, and you get advance notice of kind of SURF events and an advance booking period, because some of the events sell out quite quickly. So if you are interested in membership, if you're not already a member, there's information on the Join SURF page, but I'll send something round in my email later. And just lastly, about some events that we've still got coming up this year. This is the last of the SURF Award Shared Learning events, but recordings of all 4 events are on the SURF YouTube channel. So when you get the link to this one, you'll be able to look back at the last 3 if they're of interest. The SURF Annual Conference is coming up. It's 3 virtual sessions, an hour and a half each, between the 24th and 26th of August. The overarching theme is Partners in Place. Ewan touched on briefly the 3rd section. So the sessions look at post-COVID recovery, place-based regeneration, and then finally climate change. And we're delighted to have Karen will be speaking on behalf of Creative Scotland at the 2nd session, along with some other funders as part of a funding panel. And as I mentioned, the SURF Awards dinner, so information on that will be out later in the year. But all of information on our SURF events and other partner events are available on the events section of the SURF website. And that's just me for the adverts. So that's me, Ewan, if you're wanting to say a final goodbye, or are we just wrapping up here?
We're just wrapping up here.
Thank
you very much for that, Emma, and thanks very much again to our 4 speakers, and thank you very much to the audience for joining us this morning. We look forward to seeing you in real space and time at some point in the future.
Thanks. Bye.